Right, so I'm Shoya Haruni. I run the Mando'a Lessons YouTube channel, and I'm part of the Language Council in the Mando Creator server. We are a group of fans trying to expand the Mandalorian language. Today I have a presentation that I've run a few times before. It kind of covers the basics of just about everything there is to know that you could want to know. And yeah, I'll go ahead and then begin with going to the next slide. And there we go. So the things we'll be talking about today is the background of the Mandalorian language, Mando'a, as well as other things that are called Mandalorian language, the alphabet and its pronunciation, basic pronouns, roots, building words, sentences, and translating. Yeah. So I move the timer forward a little bit. So before we have something called Mando'a, is a few things that are called the Mandalorian language, or are a language that's reference to Mandalorian stuff. The first one is Notran Cant, and this is the language of the Taung or the Tong species that originated from Coruscant, that are the progenitors of the Mandalorian culture. The actual language itself appeared in the Shadows of the Empire soundtrack for the video game in the 90s, and it's kind of like Proto-Germanic type thing. It doesn't really resemble Mando'a at all, other than the title of a poem, which is Da Werda Verda, which means the Shadow Warriors. Um, and there's not a whole lot about that besides that one soundtrack that it exists. But it was technically considered, it's technically a Mandalorian language, but it doesn't have much to it. The next thing that was like called Mandalorian, and it's spelled with an E up here on purpose, because that's how Philip Metchin wrote it. And this was created for Attack of the Clones, for Jango Fett on his Slave One starship. The readouts and the displays use this font that appears down here, and it's a little low res, but I'm sure you've all seen it before. This is created by Lucasfilm for that movie, and it is technically copyright protected. So if you've seen fonts online, there are a few differences, like the C might be different, or there might be a different W or something like that. There are comparisons that I can share with you if you're interested in that. But yeah, and then the last thing that came out and was referenced as a Mandalorian language before Mando'a was Concord Dawnish, also known as Concordian. And that is the language of the planet Concord Dawn. And there is only one word that came out, and that was Tat, because it was from the book The Cestus Deception, and there was someone named Jango Tat, which means Jango's brother. And so Tat means brother in Concord Dawnish. Later on, it was expanded more by Karen Travis to include a few other words, like Neargain, which would mean my name is. But there's not a whole lot to it. But speaking of Karen Travis, that's how we get to what is known as Mando'a. Mando'a is the language of Mandalorians, and it was created for the Republic Commando series. The first thing that was created was Jesse Harlan, who was a composer who wrote the lyrics for the soundtrack. And he wrote Vodean, which you've probably all heard before, Carta Tor, Gratuat Kun, those songs. And he was inspired by things like Hungarian and Ukrainian and stuff like that, and he wanted and Latin, and he wanted that kind of sound for it, and so he created the basic look and feel of the language, and then it was later passed on to Karen Travis, the author who wrote the Republic Commando novel series. novel series. It was it didn't have very much to begin with. There was a few words in the first book, but later on she wrote up to about 1,000 words in the dictionary. And she created grammar for it based on kind of backwards reverse engineering what Jesse Harlan came up with. Eventually, she stopped working on the language because the Clone Wars TV show came out and retconned basically everything from Legends when it comes to the Clone Wars. So she stopped writing and stopped working on the language, which leads us to post-Mando'a, which is Mando'a refers to any fan expansion of Mandalorian, and that would include Mando creator as well as other notable contributors such as Talger, who created a very large database of Mandalorian words. Concordian, not to be confused with Concord Donish, was created technically by fans who were trying to do the same thing Karen Travis did, reverse engineering the Republic Commando lyrics into a usable language. And instead of using Karen Travis's Mando'a, they used this fan version for the Clone Wars. If you remember, if you've seen the Clone Wars, the episode The Mandalore Plot, there was someone who was speaking in the Concordian dialect, and that is based on this fan version of Mando'a rather than Karen Travis's version. And are there any questions on that? That's the basic background of everything there is to know about Mando'a. Not, I'll move on to the next slide.
What was the difference between the fan version and the
Yeah.
version?
So for Concordian, yeah, basically it didn't follow the rules of Karen Travis's grammar because they didn't have her grammar, and it didn't follow the same like vocabulary. So they interpreted the lyrics based on the English translation, and they basically did a one-to-one translation of the lyrics from English with with the Mandalorian lyrics, and that resulted in certain words getting mixed matched with what they actually meant to Karen Travis and to Jesse Harlan, because they didn't have the behind-the-scenes information about what those words actually meant. So certain words like solus, I think solus means one in Mandalorian, in Mando'a, Karen Travis's Mando'a, but they interpreted it to mean soul. And so there was also, yeah, and there was also other words that they had created entirely, like Satine tells the dying Death Watch bomber, Hikadi Normi'im. And Normi'im, it was a completely fan-created word that didn't appear in the lyrics. So that was the first instance of Mando'a, or not necessarily Mando'a, but Mandalorian in there as fan Mandalorian. And also, actually, interestingly enough, that I forgot about is they don't use this officially licensed font in the Clone Wars. They use one of the fan-created fonts. It was created by Eric Stormtrooper. So that's kind of interesting. So this next slide, you probably can't read it very well, but this is the alphabet, and I can post this chart in the Discord if you want to see it better. But this will basically go over the pronunciations of and the letters that they have in the alphabet. So starting at the top, we have vowels, and the vowels always like no matter where they are, they always sound the same. So the letter A always sounds like ah. The letter E always sounds like or a. That one is the one that kind of changes, but everything else is always the same. Um, the letter I sounds like E. The letter O sounds like O. The letter U sounds like oo. And the letter Y sounds like an I. It sounds the same as I, E. And then there are certain vowel combinations that we call diphthongs, because these vowel combinations are pronounced as a single gliding sound. And if you see two vowels that are next to each other that aren't these vowels, then they are pronounced as two distinct syllables. For example, you and I next to each other are oo e rather than we as a single sound. So those ones are AI and AY, which both sound like I. AU sounds like ow. EY sounds like A, like and E, A. OI and OY sound like oi. And OA sounds like aw. Um, and that's it for the vowels. The consonants are really easy because they sound exactly like you expect them to sound if you speak English. The only ones that are a little bit different is the R. If you don't know how to tap or roll your R's, you can do your regular rhotic R like we do in English. However, Karen Travis did both. She did a tapped or rolled R sometimes, and sometimes she did a regular rhotic R. Um, and the other one that is a little bit confusing is C. C has specific rules about when it sounds like an S and when it sounds like a K. And those rules are what vowel follows it. If it's followed by an A, an O, or a U, it sounds like a K. And if it's followed by an E or an I, it sounds like an S. So that's ka, kun, kopad, or sin, like sin fetin, or setar. Yeah, so then there are consonant combinations, and the ones that you'll probably not be confused about are CH and SH. They sound exactly how you would expect. The kind of funky ones are CY and YC. Those ones makes it sound like an SH. So like if you've seen the word share, which means beloved or popular, it's CYARE, share, and it sounds like an SH. And YC is the same, like retish. The Y is pronounced there, but the C sounds like an SH. Retish. The other one is VH. The VH sounds kind of like an F. The main difference between VH and F is that when you pronounce an F, your teeth touch your lips. If you are familiar with articulation, if you just hold an F shape in your mouth, you can feel your teeth touching your lips. The way I pronounce VH is by just closing, like pursing your lips, kind of like you're going, phew, that was close. Making a pursed lips and blowing air through it is kind of how VH sounds like. And finally, TS is like tsunami or cats. It's a t sound. The last one is not really a letter per se, but it's the apostrophe. It's called the beten in Mando'a. Beten means sigh, but in this case, it's a glottal stop, which just means you cut off the flow of air as you sang it. Like when you say Mando'a, you don't go Mando'a with like a W like gliding in there. You stop at the Mando and then Mando'a. Yeah. You may notice that there is no F, X, Q, or Z. These letters, while they are in the font, they are not in the language itself because they did not appear in Jesse Harlan's original lyrics or Karen Travis's expansion. Yeah, so if there's no questions on that, I can move on. Here are the basic pronouns. Basic pronouns that you'll need. They are very easy to learn because they're always the same. The second person pronoun especially is always gar. So with Mando'a, it's unlike English where we have I and me if it's a subject or an object. It's always ni in Mando'a. And for we or us in English, it's me, MHI, me in Mando'a. And first person forms are unique in that they have a special possessive form that is different from the non-possessive form. So my or mine is ner, and our or ours is kun. So ni is I, me is we, us, ner is my, mine, and kun is our, ours. Second person is easy. It's all gar. You, your, yours, you all, y'all. It's all gar. That can be confusing sometimes, whether you are not sure if something is possessive or not. Like garbuir would mean either your parent or you are a parent. But, in English, we have your and you're the contraction. So in context, it's not that hard to understand. And finally, in third person, we have the universal pronoun for he, she, or they singular, and that is keish. That is used for all people, no matter what their gender is. And for plural, it's val, V-A-L, val. That is they and them. And then again, there's no unique possessive form. It's just keish and val for his, hers, and theirs. Any questions on pronouns? All right. So Mando'a words are made up of roots, or like stems, as you may have seen them called before. You can make new words in Mando'a is tricky because Karen Travis, the author, didn't really have a system, or at least not a transparent one. So we go through great pains in Mando Creator. We have a whole criteria list that we do when we make new words, and we vote on them all, which slows down our process significantly. But we like to make sure that they are all high quality. But roots are the base or the main part of a word. Sometimes it's obvious what the root is in a word, like ja in jate or do in douche. These appear in other words like jahal. Jahal means health, and the ja is good, like good health, basically. Technically, hal means breath, so jahal means good breath or health. And sometimes it's not as obvious, like bru in ori bru comes from buruk. Buruk means danger, and ori bru means emergency. And so sometimes roots can mutate when they're in new words. So you have to be careful with that and making sure you're finding the correct root. A lot of the time, roots by themselves are nouns, but not always. Um, like, for example, the root car, which I'll get to later, means star, but it also can mean like core, like a star is the core of a solar system. And it's used in words like heart, which is karta. Um, a lot of the time, you can find the root by dropping a suffix from the word, like a verb suffix or an adjective suffix, which I'll get to more later. And with roots and suffixes, you can also combine roots. Yeah, so roots can be modified with affixes, or they can be combined with other roots to make new words. Yeah. Let's see here. So here's an example of a root and how to find it. So we have the word tailir in the dictionary. Tailir means to hold or to keep. And we have another word, kartailir, which means to hold in the heart. And colloquially, this means to know something. And tailud means to take a break or to preserve rest, basically. And all of these words have tile in them. So we know that tile is the root in common, and it's related to holding or keeping or preserving, things like that. So we can make new words by adding a suffix, like, for example, tailish would make tile into an adjective. The ish is an adjective ending. Tailish means held or kept or preserved. And kartailir, like we said before, comes from karta. Karta means heart. And tailud, the ud, comes from udes, which means rest. Are there any questions on that, on the root tailir and root words in general, how to find them? Okay. So before you decide to make a new word by either combining roots or by using suffixes or prefixes, make sure that the word isn't already in the dictionary. You don't know how many times we get submissions in the Mando'a Creator submission form for words that are already in the dictionary. And sometimes there's a synonym or a similar word that means mostly the same thing in there. So just look around and maybe pull out a thesaurus or just Google synonyms for whatever you're looking for, and you'll probably find something. If not, you might have to make a new word. But the reason why you don't want to just make new words all willy-nilly is that not everyone's going to know exactly what you mean with your new word. When you use suffixes and prefixes, that's fine most of the time. Like tailish, no one's going to be confused about what tailish means. But when you combine roots, especially, not everyone's going to know what you're saying. So when you do make these new words, you want to write them down. Keep a glossary if you can, especially if you are posting them like for fan fiction or things like that. And when you get the chance, submit them to the Mando'a Creator Dictionary. There's a submission form in the dictionary, and also I have it in the resources in the slides. So yeah, basically make new words sparingly. Try to find what you can, like, or try to rephrase your sentence if you can. But here's how to build words using affixes. Here's sometimes roots can be used as affixes, like ori. Ori by itself is a root and an adjective, and it means great or big on its own. But you can use it by combining it with a root to make something mean very something. Like jate means good. If you say ori jate, it would mean very good. Some other prefixes are the tense prefixes. We have ru for past tense and ven for future tense. So like tailir from earlier, to hold. Ru tailir would mean held in the past tense, and ven tailir would mean to hold in the future, or like I will hold. Ori, as I just discussed, it intensifies whatever you're adding it to. Nu, ne are interchangeable. The only difference is the pronunciation and whatever flows better with the word, and that means a negative. It just so ne jate would be not good. Be is by itself means of, but it can be prefixed on words when you're doing possession. I have an example of possession at the bottom. You may not all be able to see that, but basically, whenever you talk about possession in Mando'a, you use be. And you would say, for example, the sword of Boba. Instead of saying Boba's sword, you would say sword of Boba. And you would use be. And the reason why it's a prefix is because both with the negative and with the possessive, if the next word starts with a vowel, like atin instead of boba, then you would say the kad batin instead of kad be atin. You would say kad batin, kad meaning sword. You can make compounds like bobakad or atinkad, but because of previous things that I said about making new words, that can be confusing, and people might not know that you're making a possessive. They might think you're trying to make some new kind of compound word. So it's better to use the of construction, kad, be, boba. For suffixes, the first one I have is plural. That is e. The letter e at the end of a word makes it plural, and that sounds like a. Or se if the word ends with a vowel. So like ka means night, kase would mean nights, as in nighttime. And kad is sword, kade would be swords. As we discussed earlier with tailish, ish is an adjective and adverb ending, and so is la. And just like nu and ne, there's no real difference between them besides what flows better with the word, whatever sounds better. You might find a few words where ish and la have different meanings, like shukish and shukla. One means broken and fragmented, while the other means broken down and not working. But they both mean broken. So sometimes there's a little bit of different context there, but they are pretty much interchangeable. And they are both adjectives and adverbs at the same time. I'll get into that more a little bit later, but basically, you just try to figure out what word it's modifying. If it's modifying a noun, then it's an adjective. If it's modifying a verb, then it's an adverb. Verb endings. So the suffix for verbs, all verbs end with a vowel and then an R. It can be any vowel. Obviously, use whatever vowel is in the dictionary. If there is a word for it. If there's not a word for it and you're making a new verb, you can use any of these: IR, AR, OR, UR, or ER. We recommend against using ER for new words because when it's conjugated, you remove the R, which would leave it as just an E, which can be confusing with the plural. So it's better to use IR, AR, OR, UR. And the last suffix I have here is ika. Ika is a diminutive, and it is like saying vod. Vod means sibling. It's gender neutral, so brother, sister, or sibling. And vodika is like a term of endearment for, it's like saying bro or sissy or something like that. Something more cute than just saying brother or sister. Oh yeah, and the one that I didn't put on the table is the comparative and superlative suffix. So we have jate, like I said earlier, means good. If you say jate sha, it means better. And if you say jatne, it means best. Not to be confused with the negative. If it's at the beginning of a word, if ne is at the beginning of a word, it means it's negative. If it's at the end of the word, it means it's superlative or most version of something. Are there any questions about that? Because I know that's a lot of content in one slide. Okay. And there we go. So, building sentences. Get out of your way here. If you are familiar with English, you'll know that it's subject, verb, object. I know you. I know you. Subject, verb, object. And Mandalorian is the same for the most part. You might find some phrases and sayings that are not like this. Like, for example, Bikni Skanadin means that annoys me. But it's that verb, that is subject, object, verb. But when you're making your own sentences, you're going to want to follow subject, verb, object as most as possible. As long as your subject is before your object, you should be fine. Adjectives and adverbs can come before or after what it describes, whatever makes it easier to understand. Because, like I said earlier, they can be both an adjective or an adverb, and there's no difference. You can't tell other than context. For example, Verd Ivinish Shadla means either the warrior quickly moves or the quick warrior moves. If you want to avoid that ambiguity, then you would arrange the sentence around a little bit different. Ivinish is either quick or quickly. So if you wanted it to be the quick warrior moves, you would say Ivinish VRChatla. And if you wanted it to be the warrior moves quickly, it would be VRChatla Ivinish, rather than putting Ivinish in the middle where it could be either one and you don't know. The standard sentence is in present tense. Like we discussed earlier, you can use the past and future tense by adding a prefix, ru and ven. However, most of the time, this isn't necessary because Mandalorians prefer that you use a kind of temporal locator. So, like, instead of saying, I went to the store yesterday, you could just say, I go to store yesterday, and you know it's in the past because it was yesterday. Or I go to store tomorrow, you know it's going to be in the future. You don't have to say, I will go to the store tomorrow. So you don't need ru and ven most of the time, as long as you have some sort of locator in time. And it's declarative, which means it's a statement. And it's an active voice, which means the subject is the one doing the verb. If it was passive voice, it would mean the subject is receiving the verb, being acted upon. And Mando'a has a preference for active voice instead of passive voice. And I'll go into more detail in that in a later slide, and how to make passive if you have to. But there are techniques you can use to take a passive sentence and turn it active. So your declarative sentence can be made interrogative or into a question by adding tion. Tion at the beginning of the sentence. Tion is like a verbal question mark. It's a particle, not a word. It doesn't have a definition. It's like raising your pitch at the end of your sentence, like you went to the store as a question. Um, and you can make it a command by adding ke to the beginning of the sentence. And the k with a beten, k with an apostrophe, is for if the word starts with a vowel, just like with be and with nu. So that would make go to the store. You would add ke to it because it's a command. Now, when you have tion on a sentence, it makes it a yes or no question. So you went to the store, yes or no. But you can ask for specific types of questions by using compounds with tion. So tionad is ad is the root for persons. It's used in ad, which means child. It's used in adat, which means person. It's used in adade, which means personnel. So tionad is who, and there are other ones in the dictionary like tion tur. Tur means day, so tion tur is like when. Tion jor means why. Jor is the root for reason. Jorbe means reason, and jorku means because. So tion jor means why. So you can find those all in the dictionary. All questions begin with tion unless you're lazy. And Mandalorians love to drop words when they aren't necessary. So you may find questions that begin with meh or meg, M-E-G, or just M-E beten. Meg means what, as in, I know what you did. Ni kartaili meg garvabi. But if you start a sentence with meg or meh, because you're starting it with the word what, you don't need tion because people know that you're already asking a question. Yeah, so for example, kopanir means to want. So me kopani would be what do you want, while tion kopani is do you want, as a yes or no. Literally, it's more like what do you want versus want this. Are there any questions about sentences so far? Or questions, commands? Okay. So, when you're translating from English to Mando'a, you need to think in the meaning of the sentence or the intent of the sentence, not the literal translation of the word. Because when you translate word for word from English, you're going to get some sloppy Mando'a. It's going to sound bad and it's going to look bad. Because, well, not always. Sometimes there are some sentences that translate one-to-one, but not always, because Mando'a is a different language. It's not just a cipher for English. It has different grammar rules and it has different idioms, which are like colloquial phrases and stuff like that. So you want to try to think in the meaning, not the one-to-one translation. If you've ever seen, I like to compare it to The Third Gathers Backstroke of the West, which is the very poorly Chinese Google translated version of Revenge of the Sith, which is really fun to watch, but doesn't make any sense. And that's kind of what it's like when you translate literally in Mando'a. If you can't find a word in the dictionary that you're trying to translate, like I said before, try to find a synonym or rephrase before making new compounds. I've found that translating is a really good practice because translating sentences, that is really good practice because you you learn how to rephrase your sentence to break it down to its bare meaning, and make it so that you are getting your intent across without actually saying what you might be trying to say in English. Um, yeah, and so English use lot word, but in Mando'a, few word do trick. That's like I said before, you drop a lot of words. Like tion, meg, is technically the grammatically correct way to say what is a question, but tion gets dropped a lot whenever you use meg, just for that reason, because you don't need to say it because they already know you're asking a question. Pronouns, a lot of the time, if you're talking to someone directly for multiple sentences in a row, you don't need to say gar, which is you, if you remember, every time. And you don't, if you're talking about yourself, you don't need to say ni every time because you've already established in the context that that's what you're saying. So Mando'a uses or drops a lot of words. Like I said before, if something is in passive voice, it prefers to be an active. And the next slide, I think, is how you can change that to active. Um, yeah, I think translating is the best way I've learned. Obviously, flashcards work for some people, stuff like that, but I think translating in context is the best way to learn Mando'a, in my opinion. Um, I've actually I've been translating the Epic of Gilgamesh into Mando'a, and I'm going to publish that soon. And it is very difficult, but also very rewarding when you make something that is then when you translate something that doesn't seem like it's easy to translate. But eventually you find the way. So passive voice. This sentence, the armor is broken by the warrior, is passive. Because the armor isn't doing anything. The warrior is the one breaking the armor. But because the subject is the armor, because it's first, it's a passive sentence. So the best way to translate the armor is broken by the warrior would be to make it just change the order of the sentence to Verd Shuku Beskargam. Verd means warrior, Shuku means break, and Beskargam means armor. So the warrior breaks the armor instead of the armor is broken by the warrior. That's the preferred way of saying it. Some other ways you can use pronouns. So ashnar means someone has or someone has done. So ashnar shuku beskargam means someone has broken the armor. And ashad is the same case. It means someone else has broken the armor. Another person broke the armor. Not me. Wasn't me. Yeah, so that's how you make something from passive to active. But if you really want to keep the passive translation, like it's important for the meaning, or if you just want to do it for some reason, the way you do it is by taking the verb shuku and turning it into an adjective, shukish. And you add the verb kui. So it's the same way that you do it in English, right? So the armor breaks, or rather, the armor is broken. You use is and broken, is being the verb and broken being the adjective. So beskargam kui shukish would mean the armor is broken. And then if you know who did it, you would say deverd, by the warrior. But like I said, avoid passive if you can, unless you feel like it. I need to take a drink real sec. Oh, and that's the end anyway. So here's some resources. I'll post these slides in the Discord, so you'll have plenty of resources to look through. I have YouTube videos about the background that we discussed, the alphabet like we discussed, pronouns, prefixes, suffixes, compound words, and then there's the Mando Creator submission form if you want to submit new words. There are more resources. I'll just let the playlist or the slides play out. Here's a YouTube playlist for building sentences. Here's Karen Travis's original grammar guide. And yeah, There's more resources. Like I said, these will all be posted. Oh yeah, actually, let me pause that there. Parjai, a good friend of mine, created a website that has random sentences in Mando'a, so you can use that for practicing translating from or to Mando'a. All right, so uh, free to ask any questions or comments or anything like that.
Orizote. Very nice. We're good. Yes.
Yes.
Have you ever considered, well, making some kind of what is it, multiple like lectures, or what would you call it, like a I forgot the word, but uh,
More
a,
lessons or
yeah,
So
kind of like online
like
classes and such.
right. So like progressive, like getting more difficult as you learn
Yeah,
each lesson. Yes, actually, I'm in the process
yeah,
of
like
working on some of those.
okay,
Um, I've made a few so far, more basic lessons that don't cover literally everything there is to know about the language, like this one does. Um, Basically, starting with uh, pronouns, which we covered here, um, basic verbs, basic nouns. Um, I could even pull that up and have a look at it actually. Um, those run also about an hour, but I do like greetings. I do the basic sentence structure, subject, verb, object, some basic like family words, some warrior words, because there's lots of warrior words, some dialogues, stuff like that. Um, I did, since you asked like online stuff, I did actually have a Google Classroom a long time ago before you even had Discord. Um, and I made some like homeworks and like some tests and stuff that people can take, like quizzes. And I got basically 2 submissions, and then I never bothered to make another one. um, on my Patreon, I make like worksheets and stuff. Um, and some people have filled out those worksheets and stuff as well. Uh, I can give those worksheets out for free as well because I don't mind that if people want some practice.
yeah.
yeah. If I'm gonna be honest, I would like to, because Mando'a seems like a very interesting language to learn.
Yeah. So the way I learned is primarily through translating things I was interested in. I basically taught myself. I did have a lot of help with other people. Like I got a lot better when I joined Discords, like the Mando Creator Discord and the OU Bot. Is another like Mandalorian group Discord, because we talk a lot in that. And actually, I have a Arma 3 group that I'm in that we play every Saturday, and we speak in context. And Arma is great for playing or for speaking Mando'a because we have so many words for warrior and for fighting. There are 3 words for stab, for God's sake, based on the type of blade you're using. Um, so yeah, lots of ways to learn it. I think speaking with other people and translating is the best way to do it. But I can post those worksheets and stuff.
Would be appreciated.
Yeah, thanks for the question. By the way, is there a text chat that I'm missing or something? Because I see people like having like dots over their head, like they're typing or something.
Yeah, Aurelia
Yes.
just said they're curious for the Mando'a like tactical combat.
I think Terrence also had a question earlier, but you didn't see it.
Yeah, I don't know how to open. I'd never used VRChat, so I don't know how to open the text chat. So if you could read those off for me.
Oh, Terrence is just saying. He's saying, where would you say you learn most of the things you know?
Okay. Primarily by teaching myself. I created a YouTube channel as a way to teach myself and to teach others. I translated. I created the channel in anticipation in 2019 that the Mando TV show would have Mando'a in it. Spoiler alert, it didn't. But I did decide to translate the whole first episode, so I did that. And that was a good learning experience because there's a good mix in there. The Mandalorian scenes were really easy to translate because they were speaking like Mandalorians. It's almost as if they wrote it in Mandalorian, and then some executive was like, "We're not even seeing this guy's face. You're gonna have him speak a different language too." So they needed to relate to the character, so they didn't have him speaking alien language, but it was easy to translate the Mando'a stuff, but then like the Imperial client, for example, was much more difficult, and I had to stretch my brain a little bit for there. As for resources, I'll post the resources, but there's a lot of good stuff like just I had the dictionary as like bookmarked on my webpage, and it would be like I would be just scrolling through the dictionary until eventually I learned it all. Um, and translating, like I said, is what really helped me the most. Poems, songs, TV like scenes, movies. Actually, I translated the entire Ewoks movie. If you know that, the Caravan of Courage movie, and I'm trying to get voice actors to dub it for me. So that'll be fun whenever that comes out. If that answered your question, I think it was about how I learned. Yeah. I can't think of anything else. Right. Anything else?
Yeah, good.
We're at the hour now, so that was a good timing. All right.
All good.
Cool. Thank you all for coming. If you have further questions, I'm in the Discord, and I'll always be around to answer those. You can also DM me. Yeah, I'll go ahead and put these slides in the Discord so I don't forget, because I tend to do that.
Thank you so much again. And
Yeah.
yeah, glad that we had some people turn up.